What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Critical Nerd. Let me ask you guys out there something. Have you ever watched a slow motion train wreck in real time, week after week, and thought to yourself, yep, that thing is headed straight off a cliff? Because that is exactly what we've been watching with Star Trek Starfleet Academy. And now Paramount has made it official. Star Trek Academy is canceled, done, finished, class dismissed. And before anybody starts with the corporate spin, let me be very clear about what that actually means. The show is ending with season 2, not because Paramount still believes in it, not because it found its audience late, not because this is some carefully planned artistic conclusion. No. Season 2 is coming back because they already made it. That's it. That is the part they do not want you focusing on. Because if Paramount truly thought Starfleet Academy was the future of Star Trek, they would not be putting a tombstone on it before season 2 even drops. That tells you the story right there. The audience didn't show up, the show never broke through, and all the online coping in the world cannot change that. So grab your popcorn because we've got receipts, and as always on this channel, keep your expectations low and your receipts high. Let's get into it. If you're new here, this is the channel where we break down the Hollywood spin, the franchise nonsense, and the numbers behind the narrative. So if you enjoy videos like this, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, because today we need to talk about Star Trek Starfleet Academy getting canceled. Why this looks less like a creative choice and more like a business correction, and why this is a much bigger story than just one bad show getting the axe. Because this isn't just about Starfleet Academy. This is about Star Trek itself looking like a franchise that has run out of runway, with no clear next destination, no obvious long-term plan, and a whole lot of fans asking the same question. What exactly is this franchise supposed to be now? So let's start with the facts. Starfleet Academy is not being erased before season 2. It's being ended with season 2. That matters because some of the reaction online has made it sound like Paramount slammed on the brakes and instantly pulled the plug. Well, not exactly. What actually happened is more embarrassing than that. This thing had already been renewed for season 2 before season 1 even aired, before a single viewer had watched a single episode. They had already committed to more of it. Then season 1 came out, and the audience simply didn't show up. So now Paramount is in that classic modern streaming situation where they've already spent the money, already shot the next season, already signed the contracts, and now they're left trying to make a cancellation sound graceful. That's why the messaging is, don't worry everyone, season 2 is still coming. Yeah, because the check's already cleared. This is not Paramount saying, we believe in the show and we want to give it a proper ending. This is Paramount saying, we already paid for the second half of this mistake. And really, that is way worse, because it means they were either so confident or so reckless that they committed to more of this before the public had a chance to tell them what they thought. And the audience, when they finally did speak, it was too late to stop season 2, but not too late to stop season 3. And this is where the story gets really ugly. Because once you get past the press release language, once you get past the we're proud of the ambition and creativity fluff, you run straight into the real problem, the numbers. This show failed to crack the Nielsen top 10 streaming charts across its first season. Not once, not 1 week, not 1 episode. On a major legacy franchise with a built-in fan base, with Paramount trying to sell this as part of the future of Star Trek. That is brutal. And let's be honest, that is the number that matters. Critics can tell you something is bold. The cast can tell you it's important. The trades can tell you it's ambitious. But Nielsen is the public receipt. And when your shiny new franchise series cannot even show up there, that tells you what the audience thought in the only language Hollywood actually respects. And if that's not enough, let's go to Rotten Tomatoes. Critics, well, 87%. The critics liked it. Sounds great. Audience score, 51%. And on Metacritic, a 1.7 out of 10 from users. Ouch. Overwhelming dislike. And we've seen this before. The critics loved it. The audience had a completely different verdict. And if you want the most damning single data point of this entire story, at one point during Starfleet Academy's run, some internet dude, hat tip to Nerdrotic, was running a live stream of Spock. Just Spock, sitting in a chair, not doing anything, just sitting there like he's waiting for a dentist appointment. That stream pulled in more viewers than the first episode of Starfleet Academy. A stationary image of Spock doing absolutely nothing had more heat online than in the actual premiere of the show. Think about what that means. Think about what that says. That is not a backlash story. That's not a toxic fandom story. That is an interest problem. That is a people would rather stare at Spock doing nothing than watch your actual show problem. And that is devastating because outrage at least means people are engaged. This was indifference with a side of mockery. Now the disconnect becomes impossible to ignore because the critics, they were largely on board. The audience, not so much. And that split tells you almost everything you need to know. This is the same pattern we keep seeing with modern franchise television. Critics say, fresh, bold, new direction, interesting, relevant. The audience says, okay, but do I actually want to watch this? And the answer here seems to have been, not really. That's the killer. Because a modern franchise show can survive bad online discourse if people are genuinely hooked. It cannot survive weak word of mouth, weak urgency, and weak viewership. That combo is lethal. And that's why the framing matters. This did not get canceled because some people were mad online. It got canceled because whatever people thought about it, love it, hate it, argue about it, meme it, clip it, not enough people made it much must-watch television. That's the sentence. That's the reality. Now let's talk about the studio statement, because this thing reads like pure corporate cushioning. It's the entertainment industry version of, we thank everyone for their hard work during this transition, which is executive speak for, this didn't work. The statement goes on about ambition, passion, creativity, new characters, familiar faces, and expanding the universe in exciting new ways. But the only words that really matter are these: second and final season. That's it. That's the whole story. Everything else is padding. Everything else is insulation. Everything else is there to keep fans and entertainment press from saying the obvious thing out loud. The show did not become what Paramount wanted it to become, because if it had, you don't have a eulogy before the next season premieres. You issue a renewal. That's how this works. And that's why this statement doesn't read like a celebration. It reads like a softened cancellation notice. Now, a lot of people are asking the obvious question. If this thing failed so badly, why are we still getting season 2? Well, it's because it's already done. That's the answer. The sets are built, the cast was paid, the episodes were shot, post-production is already in motion. At that point, it's usually cheaper to release the thing than to bury it completely. So congratulations, everybody. We're getting a lame duck second season of a canceled show because contracts are expensive. That's Hollywood, baby. And the really wild part, if season 2 actually ends on some kind of cliffhanger or unresolved setup, then Paramount is basically telling fans, thanks for sticking around. Here's 10 more episodes of something we already decided not to continue. That's not confidence. That is cleanup. This feels more like one show failing. This feels like a franchise course correction. Because when a show that was clearly meant to represent a younger, more forward-facing version of Trek gets shut down after 2 seasons, with the second season already baked in, that tells you Paramount is no longer interested in pretending this was the long-term future. And when you zoom out, the bigger picture starts looking rough. Strange New Worlds is already on a countdown. Starfleet Academy is done after season 2. There are no big, clearly announced next wave Trek shows already in waiting to take over immediately. And suddenly, the franchise starts looking a lot less like a thriving universe and a lot more like a bunch of projects winding down at the same time. That's why the story matters. Because what Starfleet Academy was supposed to be, at least in theory, was a handoff, a gateway, a younger, accessible version of Trek, a bridge to a new generation. What it turned into was a show a lot of people argued about, but not one enough people rallied around. And that is a very expensive outcome. Now let's talk about Alex Kurtzman, because whether people want to admit it or not, his name is tied to the entire modern Trek era. And to be fair, not everything under his watch has been a disaster. Strange New Worlds has had real support. There have been pieces of this era that worked better than others. But taken as a whole, a lot of fans look at this version of Star Trek and see a franchise that lost its center. Too much present-day attitude, too much modern TV dialogue, too much message first, story second, too much of the future feeling like 2025 Los Angeles with better lighting and more forehead ridges. And that is one of the biggest problems here, because classic Star Trek was aspirational. It was about humanity striving upwards. It was about getting past the nonsense of the present and aiming at something better. A lot of modern Trek has felt like the opposite. It doesn't feel like we solved anything. It feels like we dragged all of today's cultural noise into the future and called that progress. And for a lot of fans, Starfleet Academy felt like the logical endpoint of that approach. A younger skewing, more current feeling, more modern audience version of Trek that managed to neither win over enough new viewers or fully satisfy the old ones. That is a brutal place to land. And this is the part that really needs to be said. Every single one of these shows flames out. Some corner of the internet wants to blame YouTubers, haters, outrage channels, bad faith discourse, toxic fans, whatever label is fashionable this week. But if that were enough to kill a show, half of Hollywood would already be gone. Plenty of successful projects get roasted online and still win. Why? Because people still watch them. If Starfleet Academy had been a breakout hit, if people were hooked, if the audience was genuinely showing up, then Paramount would not care how many angry thumbnails got posted. Studios do not cancel profitable engagement because some guy on YouTube said mean things. They cancel when the interest is not there. That's the difference. And that's why the sharper version of this argument is not, the haters were wrong. It's this. If the haters are such a powerless vocal minority, then why do people keep blaming them instead of asking why the general audience didn't care enough to watch? That's the real question, because most normal viewers do not know these online fandom wars. They are not on Blue Sky. They are not in the comments. They are not fighting over canon. They opened Paramount Plus, looked at Starfleet Academy, and kept scrolling. That's the story. So what's next for Star Trek? Where does Star Trek go from here, you might ask? I mean, that is the bigger question of all this, isn't it? Because this franchise has survived rough patches before. It's been canceled before. It's gone dormant before. It's come back before. But right now, what fans are looking at is uncertainty. They're looking at a franchise with projects winding down, a creative identity crisis, and no obvious slam dunk plan for what comes next. And that's why people keep bringing up things like legacy or a return to more classic tone or a movie strategy or some kind of actual reset. Because whether you loved Starfleet Academy or hated it, the bigger takeaway is hard to avoid. Paramount cannot keep pretending everything is fine. This cancellation, well, it says otherwise. It says one of their major Trek bets did not connect strongly enough. It says the current approach is not untouchable. It says the future of this franchise is now a much more open question than they probably want to admit. So no, the real takeaway here is not that Paramount heroically saved Star Trek overnight. The real takeaway is uglier than that. Star Trek Starfleet Academy got a second season because it was already made. It got canceled because Paramount clearly did not see enough reason to keep it going after that. And the excuse making does not change the simplest explanation. Not enough people cared enough to watch. That's the killer. Not rage, not backlash, not discourse, indifference. And for a franchise show that was supposed to help carry Star Trek forward, that is devastating. Because this was not supposed to be disposable. This was supposed to matter. Instead, Paramount is now in the awkward position of releasing one more season of a show it has already effectively buried. That's not confidence, that is cleanup. And if you enjoyed this video, if you would, hit like, subscribe, let me know in the comments. Was Starfleet Academy doomed from the start? Should Paramount finally course correct and give fans a version of Star Trek they actually want? And what do you think comes next for this franchise? This has been The Critical Nerd, where we keep our expectations low and our receipts high. I will see you in the next one.